Welcome back, everyone. We are now going to finish the example we started at the end of the last video. And then we're going to do one more of these all together. So this is our previous example continued. We had already found how it opens, the axis of symmetry, the vertex, and minimum and maximum. We're now going to finish up and find the X-intercepts, the Y-intercept, and the domain and range. So we're still using the same equation, y equals x squared minus 2x minus 3. My a is 1, my b is negative 2, and my c is negative 3. For the X-intercepts, also known as the roots, we're going to use the quadratic formula. So I have it right here. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we're going to plug it in. So we have 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 3 all over 2 times 1. We're going to simplify underneath the square root and in the bottom. So we're going to have 2 plus or minus the square root of 16 all over 2. Now we're going to simplify the square root. So we have 2 plus or minus 4 all over 2. Since it was a perfect square, we are now going to separate and simplify. So we have 2 plus 4 all over 2, which is equal to 6 over 2, which is equal to 3. And then 2 minus 4 over 2 is equal to negative 2 over 2, which is equal to negative 1. Now, these are not fully completed answers for the x-intercepts or the roots. Instead, you need to write them as coordinate points. So we're going to have 2 coordinate points, which are going to be 3, 0, and negative 1, 0. So you need to make sure you write them as coordinate points. Next, the y-intercept. Super nice. It's going to be our c value written as a coordinate point. We start at 0. Our c value is negative 3. And there we go. Domain, another super nice one, because domain for every quadratic is negative infinity to positive infinity. And then finally, the range. Since this was a minimum value, with minimum, we start at vertex y, which was negative 4, and then it goes to positive infinity. And there we go. We have this problem now fully completed. We're now going to do one more, because there are some ways that there could be slightly different answers. So we're going to take a look at that right now. So our final example, using the equation y equals negative 3x squared plus 18x minus 35, identify all the key features. So I'm going to start identifying my a, which is negative 3, my b, which is 18, and my c, which is negative 35. Since my a is negative, it opens down. Now for my axis of symmetry. X is equal to negative b over 2a. So negative 18 over 2 times negative 3. Negative 18 over negative 6, which is equal to positive 3. Again, we bring that 3 down to our vertex, and we're going to plug it into the original. So y equals negative 3 times 3 squared plus 18 times 3 minus 35. Again, plug this whole thing as you see it into your calculator. Just in one go, parentheses and all. And we end up with -8. So that's the y value of our vertex. All right, minimum or maximum. Since it opens down, it is going to be a maximum at, remember, it's always vertex y, so it's -8, so it's a maximum at -8. All right, now time for our x-intercepts. We bring back the quadratic formula. So we have -18 plus or minus the square root of 18 squared minus 4 times -3 times -35 all over 2 times -3. Simplify underneath the radical and in the denominator. So we get -18 plus or minus the square root all over -6. So inside the square root, we end up with -96. All right, so when you have a negative, previously, in our previous unit, I would have you bring out the negative as an I and simplify. But because we're going to be dealing with graphing, we cannot graph an imaginary number. So instead, if you have a negative underneath the square root, there are no x-intercepts. So what you can put none, or no x-intercepts, or no roots, something like that. But when there's a negative underneath, there are no x-intercepts for the graph. All right, we just have a few more things to do. All right, y-intercept. Remember, the y-intercept is going to be 0, our c value. If I go slightly up, our c value is -35. So -35. Domain, exactly the same thing as it's always been. -infinity to +infinity. And finally, our range. Since it was a maximum, we start at -infinity, and then we end at vertex y. Vertex y was -8, and we put the bracket. All right, that is finding key features. The next lesson is going to be all about taking those key features and graphing them.